I'm resigning. The words escaped Chloe Bennett's mouth. At exactly the same moment, her sensible flats caught the edge of the Persian rug outside Damien Moretti's office. "Oh!" she pitched forward. The oversized paper cup flew from her hand. Fresh coffee arced gracefully through the air before splashing across the mahogany floor, the front of her cream cardigan, and finally the crisp resignation letter she had spent 2 hours rewriting because the first 5 versions had contained coffee stains, ink smudges, or teardrops. The folder slipped from her grasp. Hundreds of neatly organized documents exploded across the office like startled birds. Colored tabs, meeting schedules, quarterly reports. A grocery list she had accidentally tucked inside. Sticky notes reading, "Call Emily." Another reading, "Don't forget Damien hates cilantro." Another that simply read, "Breathe." Chloe squeezed her eyes shut. Of course. She sighed softly. I couldn't even quit without making a mess. Silence answered her. No laughter, no whispers, no sympathetic smiles. Only the quiet hum of Manhattan traffic beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Slowly she opened one eye. Damien Moretti remained seated behind his enormous walnut desk. Impeccably tailored charcoal suit. Black tie, silver cufflinks. The youngest man ever to inherit the Moretti financial empire. Publicly, he owned shipping companies, investment firms, luxury hotels, and half the city's waterfront redevelopment projects. Privately, people stopped asking questions about Damien Moretti. His calm frightened them more than another man's anger. He didn't look at the spilled coffee. He didn't acknowledge the scattered papers. Instead, he reached down, picked up the resignation letter that had landed near his polished shoes, and unfolded the damp page. His gray eyes scanned exactly one sentence. Then, he tore the letter cleanly in half. Chloe blinked. "Mr. Moretti." He placed both halves neatly on the desk. "No." She frowned. "I'm sorry. I reject it." She stared. I don't think resignations work that way. They do in my company. I already accepted another position." Damien looked up. "Where?" "Chicago." "When?" "I leave tomorrow morning." "I've already signed the contract." She tried smiling. It came out looking more like an apology. "The salary is considerably better." "And your rent?" Damien asked. Chloe froze. "Excuse me? You've never cared about salary." He folded his hands. "You've rejected raises twice. You negotiated additional health coverage for your neighbors instead of accepting a performance bonus. You once argued with accounting because they reimbursed your taxi after you stayed until 3 in the morning. His expression remained unreadable. "So this isn't about money. It's about survival." She swallowed. The office suddenly felt much smaller. My landlord increased everyone's rent again. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I can't afford another increase. I've tried everything. A second job. A second job. Freelance bookkeeping. Weekend reception work. She forced herself to smile. "I'm tired." For the first time that morning, Damien's gaze softened almost imperceptibly. "You should have told me," she laughed nervously. "What was I supposed to say?" "Excuse me, Mr. Moretti, I organize billion-dollar mergers, but I might be homeless next month. I didn't want special treatment." "You earned it." "No." She shook her head. "I earned this job. Everything else is my responsibility." For several long seconds, Damien said nothing. Then he pressed a discreet button beneath his desk. The office door opened immediately. Lucas Marino, Damien's security chief, stepped inside. "You called, boss?" Damien never looked away from Chloe. "Who owns her apartment building?" Lucas blinked. "I'm not sure." Damien turned his head slightly. "I wasn't asking whether you're sure. I was asking who owns it." Lucas immediately pulled out his phone. The office fell silent again. Chloe stood awkwardly beside the puddle of coffee. She began gathering scattered papers. "I'm sorry about the carpet." Nobody answered. She picked up another page. And the report. Still nothing. She bent to retrieve another folder. Her elbow bumped the wastebasket. It tipped over. Pens rolled across the hardwood floor. Perfect. Lucas's phone vibrated. "So soon?" Chloe whispered. He answered immediately. "Marino." His expression sharpened. "Address?" He listened. "Current owner." Another pause. "I understand." He lowered the phone. "Boss." Damien finally looked at him. "The building is owned by Pierce Urban Development." "Graham Pierce?" "Yes." Damien nodded once. "Outstanding debt." "Substantial." "Pending lawsuits." 6. "Vacancy rate." 11%. "Residents facing eviction." Lucas checked another message. 43 households. Something cold entered Damien's eyes. "And acquisition cost." Lucas hesitated. "If we move quickly." He named a figure that made Chloe's knees nearly buckle. "That's impossible." Damien ignored her. "Call Daniel Foster." "Our legal team?" "No. Our acquisitions division." Lucas understood immediately. "You want negotiations?" "I want ownership. Today. In the next hour." Lucas nodded without another question and stepped into the hallway, already issuing rapid-fire instructions. Chloe stared after him, then back at Damien. "You can't be serious." He stood, walked toward the window overlooking Manhattan. "The building has needed repairs for years. The elevators fail weekly. The heating system is decades old. The city has already cited multiple safety violations." She blinked. "How do you know all that?" "You've mentioned each issue." "I have. You apologize whenever you're late." He turned toward her. "I remember why." The realization hit her like a wave. 3 years. 3 years of casual conversations she assumed nobody important had ever heard. The broken boiler. The leaking ceiling. Mrs. Alvarez on the 4th floor. Mr. Jenkins and his oxygen machine. Children doing homework in hallways because the lights failed again. She had simply talked. Damien had listened. "I don't understand," she whispered. "No." He gave the faintest hint of a smile. "You don't." His phone rang. "Lucas." Damien answered. "Yes." A brief silence. Then another. Finally. "Good." He ended the call. "What happened?" Chloe asked. Damien slipped the phone into his pocket. "We now own your apartment building." Chloe stared at him. The words refused to make sense. "You?" She laughed once in disbelief. "You bought an apartment building. Because I resigned?" Damien walked toward the office door. "No." He opened it for her. "I bought it because 43 families deserved someone who wouldn't sell their homes." He paused. "And because tomorrow morning, my executive secretary is coming to work." Outside the office, dozens of employees pretended not to watch. None of them noticed the maintenance supervisor standing beside the elevator. He quietly folded a blueprint into his toolbox, sent a single text message. "The building has changed hands." Within seconds, another reply appeared. "Then accelerate the cleanup. No witnesses. Especially apartment 4B. Chloe barely remembered how she reached her apartment that evening. Her mind replayed the same sentence over and over. "We now own your apartment building." Every time she thought about it, she became convinced she had imagined the entire conversation. There had to be another explanation. Maybe Damien had been joking. No. Damien Moretti had never joked in 3 years. Maybe Lucas had misunderstood. Impossible. Maybe. The elevator groaned loudly before stopping between the 3rd and 4th floors. "Not today." She pressed the emergency button. "Nothing." She sighed. Still broken. With practiced resignation, Chloe squeezed through the emergency hatch after the maintenance override clicked into place. She climbed the final flight of stairs carrying 2 grocery bags, apologizing to an elderly neighbor who insisted on helping. "Leave those to me, sweetheart," Mrs. Alvarez said with a warm smile. "I've got them." "No, really, I'm okay." The plastic bag immediately tore. 3 oranges rolled all the way down the hallway. Mrs. Alvarez chuckled. "I swear those oranges fear you. They're not the only ones." Together they gathered the groceries. The elderly woman studied Chloe carefully. "You've been crying." "I resigned today." Mrs. Alvarez's smile faded. "You found another place." "I thought I had." "What do you mean?" Chloe hesitated. "My boss bought the building." Silence. Then laughter. Not cruel laughter. The kind reserved for impossible stories. "Oh, sweetheart. I know. It sounds ridiculous." "No." Mrs. Alvarez wiped tears from her eyes. "It sounds like one of those romance novels my sister keeps sending me. I wish." The older woman unlocked apartment 4A before turning back. "Whatever happens, don't lose the man who listens." Chloe frowned. "What?" Mrs. Alvarez nodded toward the hallway ceiling. 3 winters ago, I complained about the broken boiler. The next morning, your office delivered 6 portable heaters. I assumed the city finally cared." She smiled knowingly. "You didn't tell them. You told him." Before Chloe could answer, someone knocked loudly on the building's front entrance downstairs. Another knock, then another. Voices echoed through the lobby. She leaned over the stair railing. 6 people wearing expensive suits were entering the building carrying clipboards. Surveyors. Structural engineers. Electricians. An architect. Behind them walked Lucas Marino. Residents slowly opened their apartment doors. Children peeked around corners. Everyone looked confused. Lucas noticed Chloe immediately. "Miss Bennett, you actually came." "I said we would." He handed her a thick envelope. She opened it carefully. Inside was a typed announcement. "Effective immediately, ownership of this property has transferred to Moretti Property Holdings." Below that, "All eviction notices previously issued are permanently withdrawn." She stared, then kept reading. "All rent increases are frozen for a minimum of 3 years." Another page. "Immediate repairs begin tomorrow." Boilers, roof, elevators, plumbing, electrical systems, accessibility improvements. The list continued for 6 pages. Mrs. Alvarez covered her mouth. Across the hallway, retired schoolteacher Harold Jenkins slowly lowered his reading glasses. "They're fixing everything?" Lucas answered simply. "Yes." A young mother stepped forward, carrying a toddler. "We're not being forced out." "No." But the developer said luxury apartments were already approved. Lucas's expression hardened. They lied. Murmurs spread throughout the hallway. People looked at one another in disbelief. For years they had lived with constant threats. Pay more. Leave. Accept buyout offers worth almost nothing. Now, everything had changed overnight. An elderly veteran approached Lucas. "What do you people want in return?" "Nothing. No company spends this much money for nothing." Lucas smiled faintly. "Our employer dislikes bullies." From the back of the crowd, someone whispered, "Who's your employer?" Lucas looked directly at Chloe. "Mr. Damian Moretti." The hallway fell completely silent. Even the children stopped talking. Everyone in New York knew that name. Mrs. Alvarez slowly turned toward Chloe. "That's your boss?" Chloe nodded weakly. "I organize his calendar." Nobody spoke for several seconds. Finally, Harold cleared his throat. "You mean, the most powerful man in the city bought our building?" Because his secretary couldn't afford rent. I don't think, Chloe began. But even she no longer believed her own explanation. Something didn't fit. Damien had reacted far too quickly, as though he already suspected something, as though buying the building had solved more than one problem. The following morning, Chloe arrived at Moretti Global 15 minutes early. Old habits. She unlocked Damien's executive office, straightened every folder, refilled his coffee beans. Adjusted the fresh flowers Emily from reception always placed on the side table every Tuesday. At exactly 7:30, Damien entered. He removed his coat. Good morning. Good morning. Neither mentioned the apartment building. Instead, Chloe handed him the day's schedule. Conference call at 8. Mayor's office at 9. Harbor Authority lunch at noon. You have dinner with Sophia Hayes at 7. Damien glanced down. Cancel dinner. You've cancelled 3 dinners this week. I know. Sophia will be upset. I know. She hesitated. She likes you. Damien met her eyes. I know. Something about the conversation felt strangely personal. Chloe quickly looked back at her tablet. There are also 27 calls from real estate journalists. Ignore them. And the acquisition? Confidential. She nodded. Just as she turned to leave, Daniel Foster hurried into the office, carrying several thick legal binders. There you are. He placed them on Damien's desk. We've reviewed Pierce Urban Development. And? Daniel's usually calm face darkened. The company shouldn't exist. Chloe paused. Neither man seemed to notice she was still within earshot. The financial records don't match. Tax filings are fabricated. Construction invoices were duplicated. Several shell companies receive identical payments. Damien leaned back. Money laundering? We believe so. Proof? Not yet. Daniel opened a folder. But there's something stranger. He slid several photographs across the desk. Old maintenance rooms. Storage basements. Vacant utility offices. These were taken during yesterday's preliminary inspection. Damien studied them. What am I looking at? Nothing. Exactly. The rooms should be full. Maintenance records show decades of archived contracts. Insurance files. Original blueprints. Utility permits. But every storage room is empty. They were cleared recently. Damien looked up. How recently? Within 24 hours. A chill crept through Chloe. 24 hours. The same afternoon, Damien bought the building. Someone had rushed to remove something. But why? Chloe asked, before realizing she had spoken aloud. Both men turned toward her. She immediately flushed. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to interrupt. Damien gestured toward the photographs. What do you see? She stepped closer. Looked carefully. One picture showed dusty shelves. Another showed scraped concrete. Then, her eyes stopped. There. Daniel frowned. What? She pointed toward a faint rectangular outline on the wall. The dust. It isn't even. Damien narrowed his eyes. She continued. Someone removed a filing cabinet. Recently. See the clean rectangle? Daniel blinked. I completely missed that. Chloe looked at another photo. And here. Fresh scratches. Heavy furniture. It was dragged. She picked up a third photograph. This electrical panel. The screws were replaced. They're shiny. Everything else is rusted. The room fell silent. Daniel slowly smiled. I've been staring at these for 12 hours. You found 3 inconsistencies in 30 seconds. Chloe looked embarrassed. I just organize things. Damien's expression became unreadable again. No, he said quietly. You notice what everyone else overlooks. Before anyone could speak again, Lucas rushed into the office. His usually composed face was grim. Boss, what happened? Our inspection team found blood. The room froze. Where? Inside the basement maintenance corridor. Lucas placed a sealed evidence bag on the desk. Inside lay a single maintenance ledger. Its cover was stained with dried blood. And that's not all. He looked directly at Chloe. Someone broke into apartment 4B last night. Chloe's face drained of color. My apartment? No, Lucas answered softly. The apartment directly beneath yours. The one that's been vacant for years. Damien slowly stood. Prepare the cars. Lucas nodded. You think whatever they removed? Damien finished the sentence. Wasn't everything. He turned toward Chloe. You're coming with us. My apartment? No. His voice became frighteningly calm. The basement. The convoy reached Chloe's apartment building in less than 12 minutes. 3 black SUVs stopped without sirens. No flashing lights. No unnecessary attention. Damien stepped out first. Lucas and 4 security officers immediately secured the entrances, while Daniel Foster spoke quietly with 2 forensic investigators already waiting outside. The building looked exactly as Chloe had left it that morning. Children played hopscotch on the sidewalk. Mrs. Alvarez watered flowers from her balcony. Someone was practicing the violin on the 5th floor, an ordinary apartment building. Yet everyone around Damien moved as though they were entering hostile territory. Lucas handed Damien a flashlight. The basement corridor has been sealed. No residents allowed inside. Damien nodded, then looked at Chloe. You stay beside me. I can handle myself. I know. His tone remained calm. That wasn't a request. For some reason, she didn't argue. The basement smelled of concrete, old pipes, and decades of damp air. Emergency lights cast long shadows across the narrow hallway. Daniel crouched beside the maintenance room. The blood was here. A dark stain stretched across the cracked floor. Not much. Just enough to suggest someone had been injured while carrying something heavy. One forensic technician looked up. No fingerprints. Everything's been wiped. Lucas frowned. They cleaned the scene. They tried. The technician pointed toward the ceiling. They forgot the sprinkler pipes. Tiny reddish droplets clung to the rusted metal above. Whoever cleaned the floor had never looked up. Damien said nothing. Instead, he watched Chloe. She wasn't looking at the blood. She wasn't even looking at the maintenance room. She was staring farther down the hallway, at a stack of dusty cardboard boxes. What is it? Damien asked. I've been down here. Everyone looked at her. About 2 months ago. My apartment lost power. The superintendent told me the electrical panel was here. She walked slowly toward the boxes. I remember. She stopped. No, that's wrong. Lucas exchanged a glance with Damien. What changed? She pointed. There used to be vending machines. What? Old soda machines. There were 3. She measured the distance with her eyes. They stood right there. Daniel frowned. The inspection photographs don't show any machines. Because someone moved them. Chloe knelt beside the wall. A faint rectangular discoloration remained where the machines had blocked years of dust. They were hiding something. Lucas immediately signaled 2 officers. Move everything. Within minutes, the boxes disappeared. Then the old shelving. Finally, the loose plywood leaning against the wall. Behind it, nothing. Just old brick. One officer sighed. Dead end. Chloe wasn't convinced. She walked closer, ran her fingertips across the bricks. This one. Damien stepped beside her. What? It sounds different. She tapped one brick gently. Solid. The next one. Solid. The third. Hollow. Lucas immediately pulled out a thermal scanner. A hidden cavity appeared behind the wall. Daniel whispered, Well, that's interesting. Within moments, a construction worker removed several bricks. A narrow steel door emerged. No handle, only an electronic keypad. Lucas smiled humorlessly. A secret room. Daniel looked stunned. In a residential basement? Damien's expression remained unreadable. This was never about apartments. 30 minutes later, the lock clicked open. The steel door swung inward. Cold air drifted out. Rows of industrial shelving stretched into darkness. Not maintenance equipment, not plumbing supplies, bankers' boxes, hundreds of them, each carefully labeled. Property acquisitions, escrow, insurance. Redevelopment. Daniel picked up the nearest file. His eyes widened. My God. What? These are original deeds. Entire neighborhoods. He opened another. Then another. Every folder contained contracts, eviction notices, forged signatures, transfer records, thousands upon thousands of pages. One investigator gasped. This isn't one building. It's the entire city. Chloe wandered farther inside. Without realizing it, she brushed against a metal cabinet. The drawer slid open. Stacks of maintenance ledgers filled the shelves. She smiled faintly. Finally. Daniel looked confused. What? Maintenance records. I've been wondering why they disappeared. She began flipping through them. Year after year. Repair invoices. Boiler inspections. Plumbing reports. Nothing unusual. Then, one ledger felt heavier than the others. She frowned. The pages stopped halfway. She pressed gently against the back cover. Click. A hidden compartment opened. Inside rested a flash drive and a slim black notebook. Lucas immediately reached for them. Don't touch. Damien stopped him. He looked at Chloe. You found it. She blinked. I just opened the book. No, Damien said quietly. You noticed what everyone else ignored. Daniel inserted the flash drive into an encrypted laptop. Lines of financial records filled the screen. His breathing slowed, then stopped altogether. Boss. What? This isn't ordinary laundering. Graphs appeared. Property purchases, shell corporations, foreign wire transfers, campaign donations, construction contracts. The same money traveled through nearly 20 companies before returning to Pierce Urban Development as supposedly legitimate redevelopment income. Daniel whispered, They've been laundering billions. Lucas leaned closer. For whom? Daniel clicked another folder. The answer appeared instantly. Not Pierce. Not investors. A different name. Ross International Logistics. Lucas's jaw tightened. Vincent Ross. Damien nodded once. One of the few rival syndicate leaders powerful enough to challenge the Moretti organization. Daniel continued scrolling, then suddenly froze. There are employee surveillance files. What? They investigated everyone. Photographs filled the screen. Building residents, maintenance workers, delivery drivers, tenants. Each file included routines. Employment, financial stress, medical histories, people most vulnerable to pressure. Then, a familiar photograph appeared. Chloe. She stared silently at her own face. Leaving for work, buying groceries, helping Mrs. Alvarez carry laundry, walking children home from school. Someone had followed her for months. Daniel opened the report. Employee name: Chloe Bennett. Threat assessment: low. Occupation: Executive Secretary to Damien Moretti. Recommendation: ignore, harmless. The room became completely silent. Lucas looked from the screen to Chloe. They thought you were harmless. She forced a nervous laugh. I usually am. Damien never smiled. They underestimated you. Daniel continued reading. Then his expression changed again. There's another file. This one's encrypted separately. Lucas folded his arms. Open it. After several attempts, the encryption broke. A single document appeared. Its title alone chilled the room. Operation Empty Towers. Below it, a schedule. 7 apartment buildings, 4 nursing homes, 3 community centers, all marked for demolition after forced evacuations. Total projected displaced residents: 2,184. Expected laundering profit: $1.7 billion. Chloe covered her mouth. They were going to erase entire neighborhoods. Daniel nodded slowly. And your resignation accidentally stopped them. Before anyone could process what they had found, Lucas's radio crackled violently. Boss. Static. Then another voice. Shots fired. Everyone froze. Lucas grabbed the radio. Location. Outside. South entrance. They're here. Almost simultaneously, every light in the hidden archive went dark. The basement plunged into complete blackness. Only emergency exit signs glowed red through the silence. Then, a single gunshot echoed upstairs, followed by terrified screams from the lobby. Damien pulled Chloe behind him in one swift motion. His pistol appeared in his hand, as though it had always been there. His voice remained terrifyingly calm. They know we found the evidence. Darkness swallowed the hidden archive. For half a second, nobody moved. Then Damien's voice cut cleanly through the silence. Emergency lights. Tiny red backup lamps flickered to life. Not bright enough to illuminate the room. Just enough to reveal silhouettes. Lucas already had his weapon drawn. 2 security officers formed a protective circle around Daniel and the evidence boxes. Damien stepped in front of Chloe. She looked at the pistol in his hand. It was the first time in 3 years she had seen the other side of the man everyone whispered about. There was no panic, no anger, only terrifying control. Another burst of gunfire echoed upstairs. Then came the sound of shattering glass. Lucas pressed a finger to his earpiece. Report. Static. Then, 3 armed men entered through the south lobby. A pause. They're not shooting residents. They're heading downstairs. Daniel looked up sharply. They know about the archive. They don't care about us. They want the evidence. Damien nodded once. They're already too late. He looked at Chloe. Take the flash drive. She blinked. What? The notebook too. But, if anything happens... His voice remained calm. Those 2 items leave this building. She reluctantly accepted both. Her hands trembled. I've never carried evidence worth billions of dollars. Damien's eyes softened for the briefest moment. I wasn't talking about the money. Heavy footsteps thundered above them. Closer. Closer. Someone shouted. Another crash. Then silence. Lucas raised 3 fingers. They're coming. 1, 2, 3. The steel archive door burst inward. 3 masked men rushed inside. Each carried suppressed rifles. They barely crossed the threshold before Damien spoke. Now. The room exploded into motion. Lucas tackled the first attacker before he could raise his weapon. 2 security officers slammed another against the wall. The third spun toward Chloe. She froze. The man lunged. Without thinking, she stepped backward. Her heel caught an abandoned toolbox. Oh! She stumbled sideways. The attacker fired. The bullet struck the metal shelving where she had been standing a fraction of a second earlier. The impact knocked dozens of archive boxes onto him. Hundreds of folders rained down. The steel rack tipped. The masked man disappeared beneath nearly 1,000 pounds of paperwork. Lucas blinked. Did she? One officer laughed, despite himself. She accidentally took him out. Chloe stared at the collapsed shelving. I'm really sorry. The groaning man beneath the boxes sounded considerably less forgiving. Within seconds, all three intruders were restrained. Daniel exhaled slowly. Well, that was unexpected. Lucas looked toward Damien. I still don't know whether she's unbelievably lucky, or the universe simply refuses to let her fail. Damien answered quietly. Neither. She keeps moving. 40 minutes later, police investigators arrived. Officially, Moretti Property Holdings had discovered financial evidence during a lawful inspection. Officially, unknown armed suspects had attempted to destroy that evidence. Officially, everything now belonged to the city's major financial crimes task force. Unofficially, Damien had already copied every file. 3 days later, City Hall overflowed with reporters. Television cameras lined every aisle. Developers, bank executives, housing advocates, neighborhood associations. Every seat was occupied. At precisely 10 o'clock, the special public hearing began. Graham Pierce entered confidently. Perfect navy suit, perfect smile, perfect performance. He expected another routine zoning approval. Instead, he found Damien Moretti seated across the chamber. Pierce's smile faltered, only slightly. Then he noticed Daniel Foster, then Lucas, then Chloe. She sat quietly behind Damien, with several thick binders neatly arranged before her. Pierce frowned. Why was the secretary there? The city commissioner opened the hearing. We are reviewing redevelopment proposals submitted by Pierce Urban Development. Pierce stood. Thank you. He launched into a polished presentation. Urban renewal, economic growth, affordable housing, community investment. Every sentence sounded rehearsed. Every statistic sounded perfect. Until Damien stood. I have a question. The room immediately fell silent. Pierce smiled politely. Of course. Damien slid a single document across the table. Would you explain this transfer? Pierce glanced down. His smile remained. Routine accounting. Another document. And this one? Construction financing. Another. Then perhaps. Damien placed an entire stack onto the table. You can explain all of them. Pierce's confidence began slipping. What exactly are these? Daniel answered. Original financial records. The commission members leaned forward. Daniel continued. Recovered from a concealed archive beneath one of your apartment buildings. Murmurs spread across the chamber. Pierce's face lost color. Impossible. No, Daniel corrected calmly. Documented. One commissioner adjusted his glasses. You had a hidden archive. Pierce laughed nervously. I have no idea what they're talking about. Damien looked toward Chloe. Miss Bennett. Every camera turned. Chloe nearly dropped her binder. She stood carefully, walked toward the witness table. Her knees felt weak. Public speaking had always terrified her. She accidentally bumped the microphone. It squealed loudly. Several reporters smiled. She flushed crimson. Sorry. Damien simply nodded. Take your time. She inhaled deeply. Opened the first binder. I organize documents for a living. Her voice shook. So, I noticed something. She explained the missing maintenance records, the moved vending machines, the hidden compartment, the altered ledgers, no dramatic speeches, no legal jargon, just simple observations, one detail after another. The room listened. Then Daniel projected the financial records onto the massive screen. The laundering trail appeared step by step, corporation to corporation, account to account, neighborhood after neighborhood. Finally, the title appeared. Operation Empty Towers. A collective gasp filled the chamber. One elderly commissioner removed his glasses. My God. Daniel nodded. 2,184 residents. Scheduled displacement. Estimated criminal profit. $1.7 billion. Pierce shot to his feet. Those files are fabricated. Before Daniel could respond, Chloe quietly raised another binder. I don't think they are. She removed a faded maintenance request. Then another. Then another. Each contained handwritten notes. Residents reporting strange late-night deliveries. Locked basement corridors. Unauthorized construction. Electrical outages timed with undocumented visitors. Small details. Ignored individually. Devastating together. She smiled nervously. I filed these. I never throw paperwork away. A reporter whispered. She built the entire case. From maintenance requests. The commissioner turned toward Pierce. Do you wish to revise your testimony? Pierce remained silent. Then federal agents entered the chamber. One approached the commission. We have arrest warrants. For Graham Pierce. And Vincent Ross. The room erupted. Television cameras flashed continuously. Pierce attempted to flee. Lucas calmly stepped into his path. I wouldn't. Seconds later, handcuffs clicked around Graham Pierce's wrists. Across the chamber, applause slowly began. One person, then another. Soon, the entire public gallery was standing. Residents, journalists, city employees. Not for Damien. Not for Moretti. For the ordinary secretary whose careful habits had exposed one of the largest housing corruption schemes in the city's history. Damien remained seated, watching only Chloe. She looked overwhelmed, embarrassed, almost ready to apologize for receiving attention. He quietly walked onto the stage beside her. The applause slowly faded. He spoke only once. For 3 years, people called her clumsy. He looked across the chamber. They were wrong. They confused grace with value. She notices what everyone else ignores. She remembers what everyone else forgets. She protects people long before anyone realizes they're in danger. He turned toward Chloe. The Moretti organization did not save this neighborhood. You did. The audience rose once again. This time, every single person stood. Even the commissioners. Even the federal investigators. Even reporters lowered their cameras long enough to applaud. Chloe looked out across the room. For the first time in her life, she wasn't trying to disappear. She was finally being seen. 6 months later. The first thing Chloe noticed was the sound. Children laughing. For years, the building's courtyard had echoed with arguments between tenants and property managers, threats of eviction, and the constant groan of failing machinery. Now, someone had installed a small fountain in the center of the courtyard. Flowers lined the walkways. Fresh paint covered every hallway. The elevators worked. The roof no longer leaked. Even the old brick facade had been carefully restored instead of replaced. It still looked like home. Only now, home looked loved. Chloe smiled as Mrs. Alvarez hurried across the courtyard. There she is. Before Chloe could react, the elderly woman wrapped her in a warm hug. I saw you on television again. Oh, it was only... No, Mrs. Alvarez interrupted. It was everything. Within moments, more neighbors appeared. Harold Jenkins, the young mother with her little daughter, college students from the 5th floor, the retired firefighter from apartment 2C. Each greeted Chloe as though welcoming home a member of the family. Not a tenant, a hero. Harold shook his head with a grin. You know, I spent 3 years thinking you were simply the nicest person in the building. He laughed. Turns out you were secretly taking down billion-dollar criminals. Chloe laughed nervously. I honestly wasn't trying to. We know, Mrs. Alvarez smiled. That's why you did. Across the street, a familiar black sedan quietly pulled to the curb. Damien watched the courtyard through the window. Lucas stood beside him. You could have gone inside. I will. Lucas folded his arms. You've delayed this meeting 3 times. Damien remained silent. You've negotiated with international financiers, faced rival syndicates, testified before federal investigators. Lucas looked amused. But asking one woman to dinner terrifies you. Damien gave him a dry look. I am not terrified. Lucas smiled. No. You're only sitting in a parked car, rehearsing conversations. Damien glanced toward him. I dislike you occasionally. I know. Lucas opened the rear door. Go. Chloe was helping a little boy retrieve a kite tangled in a tree when she noticed the familiar footsteps. She turned. Damien stood a few feet away. No bodyguards. No entourage. Just a navy suit with the sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Chloe smiled. You came. I said I would. You usually do. She walked toward him. I heard the city officially transferred ownership to the residents. It was finalized yesterday. The neighborhood association now owns the building. She looked surprised. You really gave it away. It was never mine. He answered simply. I merely returned it. They began walking slowly through the courtyard. Children waved. Older residents greeted Damien warmly. The feared businessman nodded politely to each of them. Watching him here, no one would have guessed the reputation that followed his name throughout New York. Mrs. Alvarez leaned toward Harold and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. They're adorable. Chloe immediately blushed. Damien pretended not to notice. They eventually reached the small rooftop garden that had recently been completed. The skyline shimmered beneath the evening sun. For several minutes they simply stood together. I never thanked you. Chloe finally said, You've thanked me many times. Not properly. She looked down at the city. I thought buying the building was the biggest thing anyone had ever done for me. She smiled softly, but it wasn't. Damien looked at her. What was? You believed me. When I didn't believe myself, silence settled comfortably between them. Then Damien spoke. There is something I've never told you. She laughed. That sounds serious. It is. He rested his hands on the rooftop railing. The day you resigned. I did not buy that building to keep an employee. She looked at him quietly. I know. No. He shook his head. I don't think you do. When you walked into my office that morning, I realized something. I knew exactly how every department in my company would function without me. I knew which executive could replace another. I knew which investment would survive if I sold it. He smiled faintly. But I had absolutely no idea how tomorrow would look. Without you in it. Chloe's eyes slowly widened. I wasn't protecting my schedule. I wasn't protecting my company. I was trying to protect the only part of tomorrow that I looked forward to. Tears filled her eyes. You've spent years apologizing, he continued gently, for spilling coffee, for dropping folders, for bumping into doors, for taking up too much space. You never noticed what everyone else noticed, she whispered. What did they notice? They noticed that every room became kinder after you entered it. They noticed that frightened people relaxed when you smiled. They noticed you remembered birthdays, favorite coffees, children's names, and promises everyone else forgot. He stepped closer. I noticed something else. She barely managed to whisper. What? I was happiest on the days you accidentally interrupted my meetings. A small laugh escaped through her tears. That's a very strange compliment. I know. It's also true. For the first time since they had met, Damian Moretti looked uncertain. I have negotiated billion-dollar acquisitions. I have faced men who wanted me dead. I have never been more nervous than I am right now. Chloe smiled through her tears. I've never seen you nervous. I hide it well. He reached into his jacket. Not for a ring. Instead, he produced the first resignation letter, still stained with dried coffee, still torn neatly in half. He had carefully repaired it with transparent archival tape. You kept it. I keep important documents. She laughed. Even ruined ones. Especially ruined ones. He looked into her eyes. Because that was the day I almost lost the best thing that had ever happened to me. A tear rolled down Chloe's cheek. She gently took the repaired letter. Then, without thinking, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. For a second, the feared Mafia boss simply stood there. Then he held her as though he had wanted to do so for years. I should probably confess something, Chloe mumbled against his shoulder. What? I accepted the Chicago job because I thought I wasn't important here. Damian rested his forehead gently against hers. You were wrong. I know, she smiled. I finally know. Several weeks later, Moretti Global held its annual charity gala. Hundreds of executives filled the ballroom. Journalists gathered near the entrance. When Damian arrived, the cameras immediately turned. Not because of him, because of the woman walking beside him. Chloe wore a deep emerald evening gown that celebrated every graceful curve she had spent years trying to hide. She still looked slightly nervous. She still accidentally caught the edge of the red carpet with her heel. She stumbled forward. Oh! Damian caught her effortlessly before she could fall. The photographers laughed softly. So did Chloe. So much for making a graceful entrance. Damian smiled. I disagree. He offered his arm once more. You've always had my favorite entrance. Together they walked into the ballroom. Not as a mafia boss and his secretary, not as billionaire and employee, but as equal partners, one who built empires, the other who reminded everyone why they should exist. Sometimes the world mistakes quiet kindness for ordinary, until the right person finally sees it. And once someone truly sees your worth, no amount of money can measure your value. Because the greatest fortunes are never built from buildings. They are built from people who quietly hold everything together. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. Which moment made you believe Damian had already fallen in love with Chloe long before he admitted it? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more emotional stories filled with unforgettable twists, powerful romance, and justice that arrives when it's needed most.